Hey everyone, this is Cindy. This is an open door, and today is Thursday, February 6th. This is the hour that we call Finding Truth Everywhere, and we're looking at a podcast um, interviewing Francis Lucille. It was entitled The Recipe for Happiness or something like that. And I want to say thank you to Kendall um, for the recommendation. Thank you, like with an open heart, because I had never, ever been able to hear Francis before. Let me put it that way. I've been in a lot of conferences and I've been working behind the scenes and I've been in the room. This is the very first time I was able to hear his teachings and be moved by them. So that's really the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing is along the same line. I'm so, so very grateful for all of us who are saying yes to this hour. So much of my life, Patricia doesn't even know, like the Joel Goldsmith study group we're doing at Awakening Together comes literally because one morning I woke up and said, "Oh, we're doing Joel Goldsmith and Finding Truth." I'm not even sure it was Finding Truth then. I don't even know if I knew who Joel Goldsmith was then. But Joel, my love of Joel Goldsmith came out of this room. It's weaving a tapestry, at least here. That's the way it feels like. All these different voices, all these different traditions. They're doing something to my insides that just light me up, and I'm so grateful because we're doing it. You know, we're doing it because we've all said yes. And along those lines, since I'm remembering, since I've remembered, I've set up the next three. Next week's comes from a direct asking from Livy, who couldn't make it today. She's helping a friend. But Livy's been working with a Sufi master, and she literally sent me the video podcast. She wants us to discuss this teaching. So I haven't listened to it, but I set it up. The week after that, I've set up another Muji. We haven't done Muji for years, and it was a calling. And then after that, there is a Western medicine doctor who's gotten really, he seems to be all over the circuit, but he's looking at heart brain coherence and vibration and sound as it relates to healing. And those are just topics that light me up. And I haven't listened to him before, but so we've got some things set up. Okay. So I only have I have probably about 10 minutes of things, including the song that I want to share before I open it up. I could probably talk for hours, but there are people here. Like I remember not always remembering correctly, but I'm pretty sure I said to Mel recently, I hope you come prepared because I know that you have an intimate relationship with these teachings through Jenny and Francis. So I'm just going to give you the highlights of what broke my heart open, and then I'm going to open it up. And I'm going to say a few things before I play the song. And I'll tell you, it's because the song is a gospel Christian song. And I want everybody to listen to the song and replace the word Jesus with the word awareness. But let me tell you why first, okay? Francis stated that the only way for us to realize truth is through our individual investigation. He was so clear on that, right? And we have a lot of teachers that tell us the same thing. Conceptual understanding just won't cut it. He also went on to state that 99% of the human, I don't remember his words with this, but 99% of the human collective, the human consciousness worships the same religion. Um, and this worship sits on separation and the belief in death. It was very, I don't know exactly what he said, but his teaching was very clear here. He said, human beings, 99% of them all worship the same God. And that God is, is characterized by separation. And if you're characterized by separation, there's this belief in death, right? When we decide to investigate what's true, he clearly also stated that you will find no direct evidence that death occurs. This is a very interesting thing. And you can't, if you just believe it when teachers tell you, it won't work. Literally, he pointed for me, it's just looking, and I gotta tell you, I just got off the phone. I didn't even tell Ronna this. Like right before Ronna and I started talking a half hour ago, I was talking to a dear, dear friend that just got a death sentence. He just got his diagnosis. It's way far advanced. He's looking at end of life and trying to figure out what he's doing next, but they're not going to do surgery. They're not doing radiation. There might be some things that might delay his sentence, but he's what did he say? Soccer. That's the last thing he said to me when his son was calling. So you got to go. He said Socrates was given the choice between hemlock or ostracism, and he chose hemlock because he really wanted to see what happened next. That was the last thing he said to me. But so I'm sitting here. Francis said, "Go in. Don't believe me. There's this. Look for it. Do you have any direct evidence that you will ever die? And don't just allow the mind to say, no, I don't. You look every time. And if you notice, almost all the fear is around these body limitation things, which going off track. Um, he said, what you will come to through your own individual investigation is that the awareness that is hearing these words is universal and shared by all. Don't believe me, do the work, the investigate. I kept waiting for him to say experiment, Mel, but he kept saying investigation. Yeah, he's not talking about. So he said, this awareness is the reality. Okay, so this is where the song comes in. And I had to go, I listened to him more than once, and he used these words, right? He said, this awareness is the reality that creates and sustains the world in which our human bodies move and have our being. This awareness is the only reality there is. So I'm going to play the song, Move and Have Our Being. It's a gorgeous Christian song, right? It speaks directly, in this song, they've idolized consciousness and gave it the name Jesus. But if you listen to this song with Francis's teachings that literally said, when you do the investigation and you think he used the word awareness, doesn't really like consciousness, supreme Brahman, God, whatever you want to use it, without that universal force, our source flowing through us, we don't exist. So I wanted to put all that out there before I just play a song that says, Jesus, you are what we move through, right? Allow yourself to extend, know that that song came from a belief in a separate God. We're sitting here knowing it's all one, and allow the music to inform from that standpoint. And then I only have like a minute after that before I open it up. Let me play it. Oh, you set it up first. And I forgot to put it. Okay. So the other just two general things that lit me up that seem to be, you know, well, in the last several of our conversations anyway. The first is the importance of the questions we ask and keeping the questions in mind. And the second, Hal just kept asking. So do you have a formula? Tell us what to do, one way or another. He kept asking, and Francis's answer was the same, and it seemed like it was the same answer that Michael Beckwith had. If you want it, you're going to have it. If you want it badly enough, you will ask the questions. And if you want it, and it was interesting because Francis really pointed to the fact that this wanting it didn't necessarily come from the egoic self, right? There is, oh, you wake up, this flame is lit. How this flame is lit, I don't know. But a flame is lit, and it opens this door. And when you keep the questions in mind and you fan the flames of this inquiry, and you feed this desire to know the self, then it'll take over, and it'll direct your inquiry, and it will direct your life. So those are the things that I wanted to state before I open things up. And now I'm opening things up. And Mel, I just want to give you the opportunity to share first if you're willing.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think Amy, all of you probably, Cindy, you did a wonderful synopsis of the whole thing. But I loved where he talked about their different. We all are already there. We are already in the garden, but there are different ways to access it through beauty or through. And he mentioned understanding, and he mentioned love, or the different ways. And I know Jenny was always emphasized understanding, but it's not the understand. Well, she used higher reasoning. She talks about higher reasoning, and which leads you then to the understanding, which is not the knowledge so much, but it's kind of an understanding from within that you just kind of know. I think that's what she's pointing to. And she also always made the point of not practicing, but exploring and investigating, which you picked up on too. Investigate, experiment. And I wanted to ask you, practicing is repetitive, right? And it comes from memory. So practice is more as maybe the ego, working on the ego. Yeah, I
I
know that's
know,
a hard one. And
yeah. So you said, I want to ask. So here's my response to that. In the beginning of this journey, my ego was a lot stronger than it was. And it was very important for me to show up for a daily practice, like being very conscious and saying, I must do this. Like the 2 times 2 equals 4. How many times did we have to practice our times tables until it became us? At some point, my practice, I fell in love with my practice, my inquiry, and I do it because I can't imagine not doing it because I miss it when it doesn't happen. Um, so I can't tell you when it
yeah,
switched. But I love walking into you know, my books and my study and my inquiry, but I don't know. It's my way of life now more than my practice. That makes sense.
yeah, I think she wants it to keep it fresh. And so it's not bringing, old memories, from the past and living from there, and living and not knowing. So you always stay open and are present now. And it's really hard not to be in the future or the past, but to keep that freshness and aliveness. And another thing I picked up on was, the very end, he said, and the emperor, you remember he mentioned the emperor? Yeah, the emperor was named. And so I had to go back and check up that story. Do you remember Hans Christian Andersen? And I never really quite understood. I admit, confess, I never really quite thought I got it. But the story of the emperor, and apparently the weavers made him these invisible clothes. And then the emperor goes out, right, and everybody kind of, took up, agreed with the illusion. No one questioned each other. They thought, oh, well, everybody else seems to think he's okay, so I must go along with it. So I guess it's the idea that everybody, you know, just agrees to the illusion and no one questions it until a kid says, oh, the emperor has no clothes. So it took a child to be willing to state the, kind of willing to step out of the illusion and really state the obvious. So I guess that's the 99.9% of us who buy into what everybody else believes and don't question our assumptions and beliefs. I think that's kind of what he was pointing to. But he also, the emperor, agreed to something without questioning it as well. So I guess it's, he agreed to, for these invisible clothes, he bought into that illusion too. So I guess it's that there's a pretty profound message from that story is how important it is to question our assumptions, our very, very, very first assumption that we believe we are this body mind. So anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. And I know you mentioned about democracy, was it truth is not a democracy, which was pretty cool too. And when you think about when you learn two plus two equals four, right? When you're learning that, a teacher doesn't say, well, let's all vote on whether 2 plus 2 equals 4, so that's the aspect of truth that's always true, and awareness is always there. So I think I loved
Joel
it.
Goldsmith uses 2 plus 2 equals 4 as a truth. It's interesting the way he puts it. And he says, so everything you know about physical health cannot be true. If you compare 2 plus 2 always equals 4 in this world. But, stepping into a room filled with a virus or bacteria doesn't mean you get sick. Doesn't always happen.
Mm.
So therefore, it's not a law. It's not a rule.
Mm.
And it becomes a very interesting just
Mm.
seeing and a looking. So this 2 plus 2 equals 4 has been very meaningful for me because Joel Goldsmith actually mentions it a lot.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And I also, one last thing was, the Jesus as the person Jesus, he always pointed, the kingdom is within. No one understood him, right? So he was one of those few that was not understood, but he was always pointing, to the essence. If it depends on where, if you read it, if you can come from it from that understanding, you can see what he was always pointing to. So,
I just
thanks.
finished an MPP course on Jesus in the New Testament, and so much of it was so much more alive for me than it had ever been before. Every time I go back to the old scriptures with a new level of consciousness, they have a completely different message. And
Mm.
that's a big one. Yeah. Amy Heigl. I was going to tease for just a second, but the truth is I can't wait to hear what you're about to say. I'm so looking forward to it.
Well, I have three things I want to say. The first one is what I really appreciated was when he said, "There's no way there except to be there." I love that, and that actually corresponds so beautifully to something we're going to go through tonight in uh, finding the Advaita in A Course in Miracles, when in chapter 4 it says creation and communication are synonymous. So creation and communication are synonymous. And what that means is all that is, source, is communicating 100% of the time, and we are its communication. We are the word. We are word. God is word. Word is being, right? So creation and communication are synonymous and they occur now. Always now, now, and now, right? All right. So I loved that. It's to be there. And um, and I love that he says, be open to the possibility. Like, you don't have to believe this. You don't have to, hammer it home. Just be open to the possibility, which I appreciate so much. I love Francis. I noticed he's wearing his wedding ring and that he seems much more positive. My sense, and Mel, I would take you for this because you study him more currently than I do, but I think he went through more of a cynical phase in the past year or so. And I don't really know why, but that's just sort of a sense that I have. I think this interview is a little bit older. He looks younger and healthier, but I could be completely wrong. The last thing I want to ask Cindy is you every time you mention this, you talked about how it made you cry and you were in tears. And at some point, I'd really like to hear more from you, a little deeper about what made you cry. That's all I have.
Okay. While you were sharing, it reminded me, I love when the different teachings teach the same thing and use different words. The guides where I am in book number 8 now, they keep saying, we're not helping to make you holy. No matter what we do, we'll never make you holy. You are already holy. To me, it's the same pointing, right? And that's, I think, part the when oh, David, why don't you share first, and then we'll see what I'm going to say about the tears, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was interesting because I've listened to Francis Lucille several times, and I have lots of hearing problems, and especially I have difficulty when somebody speaks that this English wasn't their original language, or at least I think that. So I don't like to say things with an accent because everybody speaks with an accent, but it's hard for me to understand. But today I watched that this morning, and it had closed captions, so that made it so much easier for me to get, because it's the same thing as because I can instantaneously look at the words and understand what he's saying at the same time, and that makes it better than even reading it. So, but anyway, and then as I was listening to him, I was thinking many of the things he said, I believe. I mean, I guess I know them to be true, and I didn't even know that these were things that he propounded, that he believed. I thought, wow, that's amazing. He said, like one of the things he says, being in the garden, we are already in the garden. It's our true nature, and I always thought that we never left the garden. And then the course says, at home in God, dreaming of exile, and that's the same thing. That means we're the garden is in Course of Miracles talk is the Garden of Eden, and so I love that, and but it's just like, we are, and Michael Singer says the same thing. The only, and the course says it again. The only, the only thing that could stop us, or is removing the obstacles of love, is all we have to do, because the love's all there. It's, everything we need, or there's nothing we need, because everything we have, and it made me happy to hear somebody say that, and it makes me happy when somebody says something and I go, yeah, I get that. I know that to be true, and thank you for sharing it with me. And so it's just very reassuring that what I think is true. It's not that I have to have an outside influence to tell me it's true. It's just that when somebody else says it's true, that then I can feel like that's okay. There's another one. There's another one of us, and I think that's the feeling. Not that he's smarter than I am. There is another one of us thinking along the same lines, and makes me feel good. And that's all I have.
Cat needs to have her nails clipped. Notice facial expressions there. All right, so when did my heart crack open? So he talks about awareness as being that which moves through our being. And for the years that I was a Christian, which was all adult, it was all literally when I first started working for Bill and working with Lisa, I was a card carrying Christian and moving up the ranks with the Order of St. Luke as a Christian healer. And part of my favorite stuff of all of that was this feeling of, at that point, it was the Christ moving through you, and they'd use the music, and we were doing we were doing laying on hands, and I could feel the spirit. You could feel the spirit, but he was pointing to that same kind of energy, but without the Christian element, right? This is who we are. So um, he said, the human experience has two sides. There's the phenomenal side and the noumenon side. And I thought it was pretty cool, by the way. Maybe this is when I started crying, was that we were just having the conversation about what the noumenon was, I think, in the Helen Hamilton reality check class, right? So we were just talking about the two sides of the phenomenal, using the senses or not, or knowing that there's something outside of the senses, the phenomenal or the noumenon side. He was talking about that. But both of those are two sides of one coin. So there's two sides to that. The awareness steps is outside of that when you explore it. So I was listening to him, and I was recognizing there was no exclusion in any of what he shared. I didn't have to reject anything while I was listening to him. I was just moving from, which side am I on? Am I on the belief of the phenomenals? It was sinking right into what we were talking about in reality check. When Helen Hamilton was saying, I used to believe I was a person and everything needed form, right? To nothing. The opposite of that is nothing. I'm very happy when I'm formless, to the understanding that they're both the same, her third place. So I'm listening to Francis. He's talking about the two sides of the coin, the phenomenal side, the noumenon side, but then there's awareness that has no sides, right? And as he was speaking, I was feeling it. And then he just started to define awareness. The awareness that stays that stays the same, that has no age, the awareness, right? Awareness is knowing itself. When we have this happiness, and we could talk about this, but it's interesting that no one brought it up when he was talking about how the recipe for happiness that you were taught by society will never work. Take a look at who taught it to you. Are they happy? So I'm in awareness, like he's talking about. He said awareness is, he was defining it. Awareness is happiness. Awareness is love. Awareness is beauty. Awareness is God. We are the garden. We are. And someone said it, stay open to the possibility that this is the truth. I'm starting to cry again. So then he says, so this is what awareness is. So when we're sitting in the space of happiness without object, right? As soon as we have an object that we've attached happiness to, it's no longer happiness. Because even in the moment that we receive the object, the fear of losing the object is born in a sense of objective awareness. Awareness is out, pure awareness is outside of that. And then I'm feeling all this, understanding that objects can come and go. It's not experiencing the objective universe. It's not rejecting the objective universe. It's allowing for it to come and go in my experience without clinging to it, being the awareness that from which it arises. And then in this space with my heart opening as he's telling me that I am that awareness. And I've heard Bill go through it so many times, you know. Do you do you remember when you were 5? Were you there when you were 5? Were you there when you're 10? Is it the same, you know, that whole kind of pointing experience? I get that. There's this awareness, this knowing of self that completely transcends whatever is going on in the Cindy story. And that, without attaching to the objective elements of the Cindy story, is happiness, is love, is peace. And then he said the words, misery is not necessary. And I started crying because I got it. Misery, suffering comes from this attachment to whatever's going on in Cindy's world. That doesn't mean the experience of sadness isn't happening or grief isn't. I'm feeling a mourning for the idea that a year from now I will not be able to pick up the phone and call my friends. Though he promised he'll find a way to talk to me after he drops the body, you know. But there's a sadness that's arising. But that's not misery. That's not suffering. That's just the current experience. He also just said, and I recognize this, and this is part of my current experience. He said, most people are more attached to the lies they live than the truth. And so they're not willing to investigate. And I watch when I become attached to my belief about anything outside, like anything in the world. I watch when I become attached to my opinions about what's going on. And it creates an intense pain. And when I don't allow that to soften, you could equate that to misery. So it was these parts of the team, like it was such a clear pointing to me. And then I'm in this place and he's like, misery isn't, it's not necessary. And it really just takes the willingness to investigate, the willingness to want the truth more than your attachment to the lies. And they're not even, the lies aren't even personal because he already said that. You know, we were born into a religion that is universal here. 99% of the human population believes these lies. Wrap something up. Yeah. So that's the closest I can come to pointing to what was going on while I was in that experience. Hey, Patricia, I know that you're listened, right? You sent me a text saying I'm listening.
I certainly am. I certainly am listening to all of you. I say I love you. My God, I look forward to these sessions daily. And when Saturday and Sunday comes, I'm attached to an open door. And suddenly you're not there. So I'm on my own. Be that as it will. I've had a couple of experiences I would like to share. I was working with someone who's very cerebral, and it takes me a while to get him from the abstraction into the concrete, and then from the concrete into what is going on inside. So there are steps that I have to take with him. But when he reaches his heart, it's like he's so surprised. It's like this deliciousness that suddenly happens. And it's so wonderful to watch and be part of, but it's hard work. And then I'm working with someone today who lives from her heart, and being able to communicate with her from that place. It's like watch, and I never know what's coming up or who it's from, but I'm very grateful to the unknown and not knowing. And suddenly there is this healing that takes place in that moment. And it just blows my mind, and it blows my heart open. And after a session with her, I just sit and cry a little. Then after that, I went down to walk in, I live in the city, so we have a little garden here in this complex, and there is a lime tree, and the lime tree has little buds now, little buds, and I saw a little flower, and that little flower, I went, oh my God, look at the birth. So I named it, but the experience of it was so full. So there was an object that triggered the experience for sure, but I walked away carrying it, and I still have it. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you. One of my favorite parts about being in Mexico was that I would go out in the morning and pick a lemon off a little bush and put it in my water every day. I had never lived anywhere where I could go outside my door and pick a lemon. Yes, Sandra. And we're happy to have you here too.
Your sharing of why this particular teaching from Francis touched you so deeply touched me very deeply. I thank you for that. It just came through so profoundly. And before I forget, before I share about this, I want to tell all of you about a movie I saw last night. It's called The Map of Tiny Perfect Things. Has anyone watched that? And my daughter told me to watch. She goes, Mom, this is what we've been talking about for the past year. So I started watching it, and I thought, I don't want to watch this. I don't know why I have those initial reactions, but it seemed like a young teenager thing. And at the end of it, I just sat there in stunned silence. Stunned silence. So I'm not going to say any more about it. If you want to watch it, it's on Netflix. But so I could tell you the 30 things I loved about this particular podcast. So many things. I have so many notes, but everybody's already said them all. And the only thing I would add is when he was talking about awareness being beauty, intelligence, love, and one other thing, happiness. Well, I had never heard the word intelligence included in those qualities. I know wisdom is there, but it made me, there was a yes, that's true. Because when I first, you said they were all gates, all portals to the same garden. And when I first had experiences, I'll just say awakening experiences, it came through understanding, a new understanding, a new opening like a crack in the universe that opened a little bit. And there was this new way of understanding, which did lead to all the other qualities. And it's the same thing that happens, like David was describing, when somebody's speaking, like when Amy's teaching A Course in Miracles, and she's pointing out how that's the non-dual teaching, which I didn't understand before. And now I understand. Something kind of lights up inside. There's like a pleasurable, joyful feeling. Oh, and it feels like awareness, it feels like more than, it's like, so I get how that, and I just love that he said they're all the same garden. We're all in the garden. Be in the now. We're already in the garden, but then he said we are the garden, which was like another incremental, like, whoa, it's opening wider and wider. We are the garden. And happiness, yeah, I keep wanting to translate that to joy for myself. Happiness is, because it seems different, because I'm not happy about, I used to be happy about things. And joy is this wider, deeper immersion that bubbles up. I felt it while you were speaking, Cindy. I feel it while everybody's speaking, really, and it's not, and he talked about phenomenal and not, and I didn't know what the other word was. Is it nominal, numinal? I don't know what the word is.
The noumenon.
Noumenon, okay. When he was talking about that, I thought, yes, it's all the same. Like I get a physical reaction, a beautiful physical glow, and almost tingly, like when I'm in the presence. I'm always in the presence, when I'm aware, when I know it, when I'm knowing myself. I love those words that you pointed out. It's awareness knowing itself. It's beauty knowing itself. It's intelligence knowing itself. It's happiness knowing itself. And it just lights up. Everything lights up. I just feel so happy about it. I mean, it's like, we're all sitting here going, yes, but don't you just want to jump up and down? And don't you want to like dance about it?
I had the
Sing about it?
music blasting for about 40 minutes while I was
Yeah,
cleaning the house this morning. Yeah.
It's a surge of energy, and it's at a higher level of it. I don't know what Mel was kind of talking about, higher reasoning. I don't know if it's reasoning, but it's definitely a higher energy. And then he said something that when we investigate this, which I don't know if I ever actually did an investigation. I don't know about that, but I do know that I have ears to hear and eyes to see. And that once that flame, that little tiny flame was lit, it turned into a fire that could not be stopped, no matter what. Even when the ego tries, and it tried last week when I was feeling all sad about the United States of America. It tried, but it cannot be put out, and it comes back. And one more thing, if I'm not taking too long. He talked about the incremental nature. I liked that when he was talking about the interviewer said, what are the signs? And he went through all these steps and the incremental nature. And I thought, yes. And for me, all the beauty this beauty that I see was at first the big things like, now that's why I want you to watch that movie, the map of tiny perfect things. At first it was like, look at the beautiful sunset. I'm noticing it now. Look at the beautiful trees. And then it became even the tiny little things. Like I still remember the day I saw a ladybug walking across. I was sitting on the deck, and usually I used to swat every bug away. I mean, I thought, wow, look how beautiful that ladybug is. I loved the ladybug, and I had never felt love for a bug before. but it becomes everything, even a mother crying over the loss of their child. Everything, not just the big things that oh, look at that pretty painting. Oh, listen to this beautiful music. Yeah, that too. But it's all of it.
If God is everything.
I so appreciate that you listen to me ramble on like this, everybody, because it's like I have no control. It needs to be said. And I have to say it. Where else am I going to say it?
I feel like I'm
husband gets
standing under the Sandra waterfall, like just this fountain and this
Can I give you some
beautiful.
more? My husband isn't, he listens, but he's kind of like half listening, but you guys are really listening. So thanks.
All right, Amy, we're listening to you too.
I love it. Sandra just basically said everything I was going to say, but just because I, I think the process for me of hearing that it isn't the object that creates the happiness or the object that satisfies. I'm sorry, Sandra just blew me away, so I'm going to have a little trouble. It's that the happiness is in me, that it is an attribute of what I am. Happiness is an attribute of the all. When I first realized that intellectually, that was a bit of a life raft for me because it separated me from the object for the first time. And it helped me to align with the goodness that I am in a way that was not personal. And yet it was deeply intimate. And as Sandra said, as that door opened and I began to see, oh, the wisdom that Cindy has is also a wisdom I share. So I don't have to feel threatened by anyone else being smarter than me or better than me because I share that attribute with them. It's not them, it's source moving through them as itself, which then opened me even more. And I don't have to be a phenomenal artist to appreciate beauty because the beauty is what I am. And I am sensing myself, my own being in the object, and I'm not separate from it. Right? And the freedom that comes with that, the openness and the freedom and the allowing and the magnificence that comes with that. So it is all available all the time. And knowing that these things, it's like sorrow is not an attribute of all that is, because sorrow is the result of limitation, right? And all that is does not know limitation. So while sorrow may be something that we experience, it's not an attribute. Anything that is limited is not an attribute. So the truth, the beauty, the holiness, all of that. Thank you for letting me go on. Again, I'm going to echo Sandra and say there's only one place I could do this, and that's here. So,
Two things before I give it to David. The teacher that taught me what you were talking about in the beginning was Michael Singer. He was the first one that really, really got me to understand that the happiness I felt when obtaining whatever it was that I thought I wanted had nothing to do with the object and everything to do with the mind not catching up and creating a new desire. So the happiness was the empty mind, it wasn't the object.
yeah, for
He
me, it
taught it
was
to me, but
Rupert and Francis. It was
yeah,
Rupert and Francis. That was a really big opening.
yeah. And then the other thing that I just wanted to read into this group that I read from the guides this morning, since we, part of it is like, why are we doing this at all? I wrote down the words. The the opportunity through separation to understand unity is the real opportunity of embodiment. And I read that again. Is that not like beautiful? Like we've been talking about this whole kind of thing, and the guides continually say this is an experience to learn through. This is an experience to learn through. But today, when I read those words, I had to write them down and look for opportunities to say them out loud. The opportunity through separation to understand unity is the real opportunity of embodiment. Okay, David.
Okay, it's so interesting. Sandra started talking about what I want to talk about, and then Amy started talking about it. Now, when I was waiting my turn, you said the same thing. The opportunity to through separation to understand the joining. I guess I'll paraphrase, but that, and I'd written that out. I said, I put this on the chat. Finally getting it is the best feeling ever, and we can never lose it. But just when Sandra was talking to something, I started getting it. And when Amy said something, I got it a little more. And then you said something, and it before I was trying to explain what this was, and it's not taking from you guys, it's joining with you guys. It's almost like the cowboy show when the posse takes off, and all of a sudden here comes some more posse members, and they're joining in. It makes it more powerful. The good guys are getting stronger and better, and it's like that. It's like, oh gee, it's not like I'm being part of this because I'm taking from you guys. I'm being part of this because I'm joining and adding to you guys. And it's like, what's better than that? I don't know of anything. Maybe chocolate chip ice cream, but other than that, this is awfully good. So thank you.
I just found this Talanto pistachio gelato, which is lighting me up. I love pistachio ice cream. And so this stuff is to die for. I'm really enjoying it. Hey, Mel.
When you were talking about, it's not the object, it's the end of desire. And it always makes me think of satisfied. We're always, being just completely satisfied. You don't need anything. You're complete, you're satisfied. And that, we've all heard the kind of expression, curiosity killed the cat. Do you know the next line of that? But
satisfaction brought him back.
Isn't that great? Satisfaction. So our investigation, it seems like it's killing us, but the satisfaction brings us back to, I don't know, that's how I took it. But so anyway, that all made me think about the end of desire is satisfaction complete.
It was another thing that Francis, I think, used to describe awareness. He said it's a state of desirelessness.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you are everything. So what do you don't need anything.
Yeah.
Really cool.
And I know the hour is up, but I'm sure I'm not the only one that has noticed that Barbie's been really quiet this week. And so I could either turn the recorder off and then hear from Barbie, or leave it on and hear from Barbie, but I now desire turn it off. Okay. So our hour is up. I love us very much. We're doing reality check tomorrow. And here we go.